Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, today we come to the Mahācattārīsaka Sutta. This is Sutta number 117 in the Majjhima Nikaya. And the title of the Sutta means the Great 40, or actually the Great Set of 40. Okay, this is a difficult sutta to explain. And one thing that makes it difficult is that, in my opinion, this sutta has been modified and altered at some point based upon an earlier text, we might call a prototype text. It has been subjected to certain modifications, perhaps several generations after the time of the Buddha, when Buddha's thought was beginning to evolve in the direction that would culminate in the Abhidhamma. And so this sutta seems to show some elements of the Abhidhammic type development being fed back into the sutta level and then being incorporated into the sutta text itself. And one way that we can determine this, and here I have to defer to my venerable friend here, Venerable Analayo, who does comparative work between texts in the Pali Majjhima Nikaya and their counterparts in the Chinese Madhyamaka Agama, a collection corresponding to the Majjhima Nikaya, which belonged to the Sarvastivada school. There is a counterpart sutta to this in the Chinese Madhyamaka Agama, very similar, except it does not contain these, what we call these Abhidhammic elements, this distinction between a supramundane path and an ordinary mundane path, or between supramundane path factors and mundane path factors. And exactly how the Abhidhammic elements enter into it, that I will point out as we go along with the text of the sutta. So let us just start at the beginning. Okay, the Buddha is living at Savatthi. He addresses the monks, indicating that he wants to give a discourse. Then he says, "Bhikkhus, monks, I shall teach you noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites." Here there are two terms used here, sa upaniso, sa parikaro. The two terms take roughly synonymous. Those things that accompany the Noble Eightfold Path. Sa upanisa, it supports, that is, things that are its supporting conditions. And its requisites, those are things that accompany it. You could call it the entourage, the retinue of noble right concentration. And we know that right concentration, samma samadhi, is the eighth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is the Arya Magga. So this is going to be the right concentration of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so the Buddha then says, what is this Noble Right concentration with its support and its requisites? Okay, the supports and the requisites are the other 7 factors of the path. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness. And right concentration itself is unification of mind equipped with these 7 factors, equipped with the other 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. That is called noble right concentration with its supports and its requisites. Here I give the Pali here. It's cittassa ekaggata. Eka means one, agga means point, ta means ness, and citta means mind. So it's the bringing of the mind to one point, that is samadhi, concentration. And this concentration is equipped with these other 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. And those other 7 factors, those act as supporting conditions for that right concentration, and as its retinue or entourage, the accompanying factors. Okay, now in the suttas as a whole, we see the path is generally presented as a gradual course of training. Okay, one begins developing the factors. When these factors develop, then one makes a gradual progress. And so in this way we come to what is the dominant model of the path in the suttas, which is that of a gradual path. And the Buddha speaks again and again. He says that this is a gradual training, a gradual practice, a gradual accomplishment. But now there are other passages which show that when somebody reaches a stage of realization, a stage of penetration of the Dhamma, this seems to come, the way it's described, as a sudden experience. We get this almost like a sudden breakthrough, a sudden enlightenment, a sudden awakening. And the texts use a special expression, or sometimes several expressions, to indicate that breakthrough experience. Okay, one is Dhamma abhisamaya, which is Dhamma abhisamaya, which I translate the breakthrough to the Dhamma. Or sometimes you could say realization of the Dhamma. Generally it indicates the attainment of the first stage of awakening, stage of stream entry, sotapatti. And synonymous term is dhammacakku patilabha, the gaining or obtaining of the eye of Dhamma, or vision of Dhamma. And in most cases, experiences like this take place after a practitioner has cultivated the factors of the path over a sustained period of time. And then when all of the spiritual faculties mature, then the person undergoes an experience of this type called the breakthrough to the Dhamma, realization of the Dhamma. And sometimes there are some texts which even show an individual who has not cultivated the path gradually beforehand, comes to the Buddha without having any knowledge of the Dhamma, and listens to the Dhamma preach, and then the Buddha is able to understand that person's mind, and then the Buddha gives a discourse especially directed towards that person. And when the Buddha knows that that person's mind is ripe, calm, confident, trusting, then the Buddha will teach the Four Noble Truths, and that person will obtain the breakthrough, will undergo the breakthrough to the Dhamma, or gain the eye of the Dhamma. Okay, so it seems to me that as the Buddhist thinkers reflected on accounts like this, they developed an account of an instantaneous awakening, which in the Abhidhamma eventually came to be merged with the Abhidhammic account of mind moments, single moments of consciousness, till one gets the idea of a single moment, mind moment, which is a moment of this breakthrough experience. And then that comes to be called, in Abhidhammic terminology, the supramundane path, the Lokuttara Magga. And it is distinguished from the earlier stages of practice, which are considered the Lokiya Magga. The preliminary practices that lead up to that breakthrough experience are called the Lokiya Magga, the mundane path. So most people first practice the mundane path. When all of the mundane path factors reach maturity, based upon the foundation of conceptual right view, right motivation or right intention, then they are observing right speech, right action, right livelihood. They make right effort, practice the four foundations of mindfulness, gain right concentration. Then when all of these factors come together, at a certain point, especially when the wisdom faculty is fully mature, as a result of this gradual practice, they will come to this seemingly instantaneous awakening, instantaneous or sudden breakthrough to the realization of truth. And so the Abhidhamma, at least part of the Abhidhamma, is concerned to bring together these two conceptions of the path. And they do so with its distinction between the mundane path and the supramundane path. And we will find that distinction being made in this sutta. Okay, but now we're going to come to a factor-by-factor explanation of each of the path factors. Okay, and now the text makes a very important statement, and this will be repeated for each of the path factors, that right view comes first. Or actually literally, samaditi pubangama. Right view is the forerunner. Right view runs ahead, goes in front. And how does right view come first or go in front? It goes in front in that one understands wrong view as wrong view and right view as right view. So this is, in itself, that is right view. Just to be able to understand this distinction between wrong view and right view. If one confuses wrong view and right view, then one has wrong view. So to know the distinction is itself an aspect of right view. Okay, and now the Buddha will proceed to distinguish wrong view and right view. Okay, so what is wrong view? And this is one of the standard types of wrong views that were being proclaimed in the Buddha's time. It's usually ascribed to those thinkers who are called Natthikavadins, who are nihilists, materialists, who hold that a living being consists only of the material body, physical body made up of the four elements. When the body breaks up at death, everything comes to an end and there's no personal continuity of any form in any way. Okay, so they say there is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed, or nothing, no practice of charity. And here, of course, they're not denying the obvious facts that people give things to others, make offerings. But what they are denying is that there is any kind of spiritual merit in making these gifts, in making offerings. That they have any benefits that go beyond the present life, extending to future life. And in India, in the Buddha's time, well, these terms have special reference, keyed to the social conditions of the Buddha's time, where the society was divided into two basic layers. There was the great mass of householders, and then there were the ascetics and Brahmins who depended upon support from the householders. And householders would present gifts, offerings to the ascetics and Brahmins, support them so that they could continue their way of life. The Brahmins would study the Vedas, perform the religious rituals relating to household life, and the ascetics would live their spiritual lives seeking realization of truth, sometimes in weird ways, but that was at least the aim of their renunciation, was to lead a higher life, a spiritual life, dedicated to the purification of the mind and to liberation. And so the materialists, or the nihilists, denied that there was any kind of merit to be gained from making offerings to Brahmins and to ascetics. And they say there is no fruit or result of good and bad actions. That is, good actions, what we call good actions, won't bring any happiness and benefits in future lives. Bad actions, unwholesome actions, don't lead to suffering in future lives. They say there's no this world, no other world. Of course, they can't deny this world, but what they're saying is that there's no rebirth or future existence coming back to this world, and no rebirth going in a future existence to some other world. They say there's no mother, no father. Of course, they don't deny that people are born from parents, but what they're denying is that there's any spiritual benefit in looking after one's parents, caring for one's parents, paying homage to one's parents. Then they deny that there are beings who are spontaneously reborn, beings reborn in other realms without taking rebirth through parents, like the devas, the gods, beings in the hells. And then lastly, they deny that there are any ascetics and Brahmins, recluses and Brahmins in the world, translating more literally, who have gone rightly, practiced rightly, and who have directly known this world and the world beyond, and realize them for themselves and teach them to others. So denying the existence of any kind of enlightened ascetics and Brahmins, that also is one aspect of wrong view. Okay, so now all of this together constitutes, this is really just one example of wrong view, perhaps the most glaring example. If you want to see other examples, you can look in Sutta number 60, the Apanaka Sutta, and also Sutta number 76. That's the Sandaka Sutta. Okay, now we come to right view. This is where it becomes more interesting. Now we see this distinction. Right view, I say, is twofold. There is right view that is affected by taints. Here the Pali expression is simpler, sāsava, that is literally with the asavas, with these, I don't like taints, with these influxes or corruptions. Partaking of merit. Now we have an expression a little obscure. Ripening is translated ripening in the acquisition. Upadhi vepaka. What is meant here by the acquisition? That is the word upadhi. Upadhi has several shades of meaning, but the relevant meaning here would be the 5 aggregates that constitute personal existence. And so meritorious right view ripens in the acquisitions, and that it leads to acquiring a new set of 5 aggregates in the future. That is, it's still, you could call it right view, which is still bound up with samsaric existence. It's a mundane right view. It's an important type of right view for leading a righteous life within the world. It's the right view that will help one to steer clear of unwholesome courses of action and to undertake wholesome courses of action. Okay, then in contrast to this, there is the right view that is noble, arya, taintless, anasava, without the influxes. And now we come to that important word, lokutara, supramundane. Literally, I think I like the translation world transcending better, more literal. It's a world transcending right view. And it's also called a factor of the path, which means that this is the actual path factor, the actual factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, not the mundane right view. The mundane right view is one of the courses of wholesome action, and it's necessary as a prerequisite for the right view of the path. Okay, now we're in paragraph 7. And what, monks, is right view that is affected by, that is connected with the influxes, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisition. Okay, this is just the opposite of the wrong view. There is what is given, what is offered, what is sacrificed. That suggests animal sacrifice, which is not right. What is, I would just say, given in charity. So there's givings, offerings, practice of charity. There is fruit and result of good and bad actions. There is rebirth into this world, into the other world. There is spiritual value in serving one's mother and father. There are beings in other realms, maybe in this realm, I don't know, who are spiritual, who are spontaneously reborn. And there are in this world ascetics and Brahmins who have gone the right path, who have practiced the right way, and who have realized for themselves by direct knowledge and explain the nature of this world and the other world. Okay, this is right view that is connected with the asavas, with the influxes, partakes of merit, and ripens in the acquisition. It will lead back into samsara. On its own, it tends to lead to a good, a happy, a fortunate rebirth. It's a necessary prerequisite for liberating right view. But by itself, it's not the liberating right view. And this is the right view that we normally find explained when we have the 10 courses of wholesome action. And this is a type of right view that doesn't require the appearance of a Buddha in the world, even though the Buddha explains this type of right view more clearly, more precisely than any other teacher. But this is, you could say, the right view of karma and its fruits that is part of the common spiritual heritage. I can't say common spiritual heritage of humanity, but of Indian spirituality. Okay, now the interesting part. Usually, when we look in the suttas for a definition of the right view of the Noble Eightfold Path, we find it invariably defined what is right view. Dukkha jnanam, dukkha samudaya jnanam, dukkha nirodha jnanam, dukkha nirodha gamani patipadaya jnanam. It is the knowledge, the wisdom that understands the truth of suffering, that understands the origin of suffering, that understands the cessation of suffering, that understands the way to the cessation of suffering. And so the right view of the Noble Eightfold Path is being explained by way of its objective content. But now we see the right view of the Noble Path being explained here from a somewhat different angle. Let us go through this definition in paragraph 8. And what, monks, is right view that is noble, taintless, or free from the influxes, supramundane, a factor, world transcending, that is a factor of the path. Now the definition. It is the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the investigation of states, enlightenment factor, the path factor of right view, in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless or free from the influxes, anasava cittassa. Anasava cittassa. One who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. This is the passage in particular which shows, you might say, the influence of the Abhidhammic style of thinking. But it's a question, I don't know whether a question can be solved, whether the sutta has been remodeled after the Abhidhamma has taken shape and ideas from the Abhidhamma have been fed back into the sutta, or whether the sutta has been remodeled in a stage preceding the actual emergence of the Abhidhamma, when the Buddhist way of understanding things has been evolving in the direction of Abhidhamma. But what is taking place here now is a shift in right view from the objective content, what does one understand with right view, towards an understanding of the mental, say the particular mental factor, understanding that particular mental factor that is designated right view. And the way this is done, and this is what is especially typical of the Abhidhamma, is by collating, bringing together a number of terms used in different classifications that are more or less synonymous in meaning, and drawing them together and defining them in terms of each other. And so here we have right view defined first. It's defined explicitly as wisdom, panya. Then that wisdom or right view is connected with, we have a list or set elsewhere of 5 spiritual faculties. Faculties of faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and 5th, wisdom. Of the 5 faculties, the faculty of wisdom is now brought in as a synonym for right view of the path. Then also we have 5 powers, actually the same 5 qualities. The power of faith, power of energy, power of mindfulness, power of concentration, and power of wisdom. Of the 5 powers, the 5th, the power of wisdom, is brought in and made a synonym for right view. Then we have 7 factors of enlightenment. We went through them last week. The second factor of enlightenment, Dhamma Vicaya Sambojjhanga, is now pulled into this list of, brought into this list of terms and made a synonym for right view. And then the path factor of right view, now it's taking the 8 path factors of the Eightfold Path and taking the factor of right view itself, and that is, of course, the right view that is noble, taintless, supramundane, a factor of the path. But it's not just any version or any form, any mode of those, of that wisdom, faculty of wisdom, power of wisdom, and so on. But it is the wisdom, faculty and wisdom, and so on, of one with the noble mind, Arya Cittassa. And then this is the interesting one. And this one, according to my Pali Text Society edition, some manuscripts omit this one. And it's the one which is rather puzzling. One whose mind is anasava, without asavas. I'll explain why it's somewhat problematic. But just to finish, one who possesses the noble path, one developing the noble path. Now, the one whose mind is taintless, without taints, normally in Sutta style of discourse, that would seem to be an arhat. Since only the arhat, you could say, is completely free from the asavas. But in the system of classification in the Abhidhamma, see, the mind is divided into mind is classified into many particular states of mind. Say, a whole universe or cosmos of different, we call them chittas, states of mind. And they fall into two broad categories. Supramundane states of consciousness, so world transcending, lokuttara, and lokiya states of consciousness, mundane states of consciousness. And in the Abhidhamma way of classification, all the mundane states of consciousness, even good states of consciousness, and interestingly, even the mind of the arhat, when he's going about his normal activities, even when he's in jhana or in a formless meditative absorption, those states of mind are all considered technically sāsava, with influxes. Even though the arhat is without influxes, it's a little puzzling. But the supramundane or world transcending states of consciousness, those are of two types. One, this is getting too technical. Is it fun? Okay, this is a very, very coarse oversimplification of the Abhidhammic classification of states of consciousness. We have the mundane, which is subdivided very broadly into wholesome, unwholesome, wholesome, then the indeterminate. The indeterminate includes things like the resultant states of consciousness. And then the world transcending, supramundane, which are of two types. The paths, actually the four paths, leading to four stages of realization, and they have their corresponding fruits, the four fruition stages. And so in the Abhidhammic scheme, all the mundane states of consciousness, and now the arhat in his day-to-day activities, when going about, say, washing his face, bathing, going on alms rounds, meeting with other monks, giving discourses, having discussions. Those are indeterminate states of consciousness. They're not wholesome anymore because they're not creating any karma. When he enters into jhanic meditation, it's still indeterminate for the arhat. If he enters into the formless attainments, They're still indeterminate states of consciousness. But all the indeterminate states of consciousness are classified technically as with influxes. I think that has suggesting that somehow, even though the Arhat has no influxes, but these states of consciousness, just anything partaking to the mundane world is somehow considered with influxes. Do you have any idea why that is so? It's a little puzzling to me also. But the world transcending paths and fruits, even for a stream enterer, the path of stream entry, the fruit of stream entry, the stream enterer still has the influxes. But the path and fruit of stream entry are considered to be without the influxes. I think because these states are extremely pure. And so that kind of understanding, even if the scheme of classification was not yet worked out, that is hard to say. But in paragraph 8 we have this right view that is noble, taintless, a factor of the path. The way the word taintless, anasapa, free from influxes, is being used here, seems to be drawing upon the conception of states of consciousness similar to that which I've just sketched in that diagram. And now what's interesting and what is missing, I think I made a point of that in note 11 or 3. What is missing is the explanation of right view in terms of knowledge or understanding of the Four Noble Truths. And it would be interesting to see how one would, maybe that is why, how one would treat the understanding of the Four Noble Truths in terms of this distinction of two types of right view. Do you remember that the Chinese Madhyamaka Agama version explained right view simply as knowledge of the Four Noble Truths? So it would seem to me that if we take understanding of the Four Noble Truths as the content of right view, when we have to see two stages in the understanding of the Four Noble Truths, one would see a preliminary stage. This would be first the conceptual understanding of the Four Noble Truths. That would fall under just in terms, okay, so we'd say a conceptual understanding of the Four Noble Truths would come under mundane right view. Now this is the interesting kind of distinction that the commentaries make. We have the development of insight, we call Vipassana, seeing phenomena in terms of the characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, non-self. Now this insight is directed towards liberation. So when I use the word world transcending in a general sense, I would say the practice of that insight into the three characteristics is world transcending, not mundane. But in the Abhidhammic way of speaking, or the way the commentaries make the distinction based on the Abhidhamma, one would say Vipassana insights, the insights that come through the practice of Vipassana, are technically mundane. That is because they are being exercised by mundane, wholesome states of consciousness. They are states of consciousness with wisdom, with very strong wisdom. And they're states of consciousness moving towards the supermundane. But technically, those states of consciousness, they're fixed upon the five aggregates. And so they're understanding the noble truth of dukkha at an experiential level, not just conceptual now. And they're investigating dependent origination, so one is understanding the origin of dukkha. But one is still operating within the sphere of mundane phenomena. The state of consciousness is a mundane consciousness. The state of consciousness is a mundane state of consciousness. Its objects are the five aggregates, or the six sense bases and their objects, or the different elements. So it's all mundane. But when the faculties, the spiritual faculties, all reach the peak of maturity, and one makes the breakthrough to the noble path, then again one has the knowledge, the understanding, the realization of the Four Noble Truths, but this is now a supermundane realization of the truth. It is exercised by one of the supermundane states of mind, and what that mind is realizing, what it is penetrating, is the unconditioned, the deathless element, Nibbana. And so there comes this momentary breakthrough to the supermundane path. Now what's interesting is that the different Abhidhamma, the two main Abhidhamma systems, worked out their understanding of this path experience somewhat differently. In the Theravada, it's truly a momentary path experience. It's truly a momentary experience. It's one mind moment in which all Four Noble Truths are realized at once. In the other Abhidhamma system, it becomes 16 mind moments, realizing the Four Noble Truths in sequence, each truth realized from four different angles. Okay, so then continuing now, coming to paragraph 9. Okay, we have right view explained, and now one makes an effort to abandon wrong view and to enter upon right view. This is one's right effort. Okay, this seems to be quite in accordance with the standard definition of, at least part of the standard definition of right effort, the effort to abandon unwholesome states and to acquire wholesome states. But in this case, the right effort is focused on view, abandoning wrong view, acquiring or entering upon right view. So that is right effort. Now we have the right effort of the Noble Eightfold Path. Then mindfully one abandons wrong view. Mindfully one enters upon and abides in right view. And this is one's right mindfulness. Here we don't have a standard definition of right mindfulness in terms of the four foundations of mindfulness. but instead mindfulness becomes connected with this abandoning of wrong view and acquiring of right view. And so we have these three states, these three dhammas, these three factors, running and circling around right view. That is, right view is running and circling around itself. I'll explain that in a moment. Right effort and right mindfulness. Okay, the right view that is at the center of the circle, that is the right view that is being defined here. And the right view that is running around and circling around it, that is the right view which is said to come first, the right view that is the forerunner. The right view that distinguishes between wrong view and right view. And then we have right effort and right mindfulness. And these three, as we will see, these three will be said to be present in relation to each one of the other path factors that are to be defined. So these three are constants, but are constant factors for the development of all the path factors. Right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. And we'll see that the ones being defined are right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood. Three constants, five being defined, but one of them is one of the constants. And they're the entourage, the supports and requisites for right concentration, which is only defined very, very simply just by that one sentence in paragraph 3. Unification of mind, one-pointedness of mind, equipped with these 7 factors. At this point, I think I should ask if there's any questions, comments, discussion, themes for discussion. Let me put my glasses.
So, is he describing what the end is like, or is he describing what the path is? I mean, using the word path is kind of weird, that way path implies a going.
That is the interesting. That is the interesting point. Path implies something that one develops, something that extends over time.
But I feel like I've seen the Noble Eightfold Path described as a description of what the end is.
It seems the path is being taken, the original conception of path as being something that's developed. That word has now being used in a new sense, which I would say it's quite unique to this sutta. I don't know any place else where the path is conceived of in this way, of being an instantaneous experience. I tried to bring the two together in my way of thinking, and this is the way I would do it. Well, I already described this earlier. That we have the path, the preliminary path is what builds up to this breakthrough. And so when that preliminary path, where one is developing the 8 path factors, particularly when one is developing insight based upon some foundation of samadhi, then when all of the factors come together, gradually as the practice matures, they're building up strength. That is normally what we'd call a path, a progression, a sequence, a series. Factors accumulating momentum over time. Then when the factors have gathered enough momentum, then there comes that breakthrough, which in the old text it's called Dhamma Abhisamaya, breakthrough to the Dhamma, or gaining the eye of Dhamma. But now It's sort of already indicated in this text. It becomes more explicit in the Abhidhamma. The word path then becomes assigned to the breakthrough experience itself. That becomes the path. Or sometimes a distinction is made between preliminary path, which is what one is gradually developing, and the breakthrough experience, which is called the supramundane path. But that is a new type of usage, which it's not in any way, well, I shouldn't even say that it's not characteristic of the suttas. To my knowledge, this is the only sutta that is using the path, the word path in that sense. Even here it's not fully explicit, but that seems to be pointing to that meaning of the term path. And even the word supramundane, it's used occasionally in the suttas, but not yet in a technical sense, or seems not in a technical sense. I know one previous occurrence of it, or one other occurrence of it, is in Majjhima Nikaya. Just by chance I opened the page, without even a page marker. It's page 789, Esukari Sutta. Some Brahmin has been telling the Buddha that members of each of the four main social classes, the Brahmins, the warriors, that's the noble warriors, the merchants, and the workers, they each have their own class duties. And the Brahmins say that is the wealth of a person, the duties specific to their social class. And then the Buddha replies in paragraph 12, and he says, "O Brahman, I declare the noble supramundane Dhamma to be a person's own wealth." And here he's apparently not using the word in the technical sense of a mind moment of Sotapatti Magga, a mind moment of Sakadagami Magga, but rather the Dhamma as that which leads to liberation is the wealth of all human beings. And then there's another occurrence of the word supramundane, I think in Mahāsunyata Sutta. We don't have to investigate these. But they don't seem to be used, these occurrences don't seem to have a technical meaning. But here, the word supramundane, now it's taking on a technical meaning. Yeah. I would think that here taint would be used in the technical sense of the three taints. Okay, John. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, they're the paths and fruits of stream entry, once returner, non-returner, arahant. I won't define them. Yeah.
and you were saying that they were collected in the Dhamma and then saying this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the thought that came to my mind was that I was told, and perhaps this is incorrect, that the Buddha was not always sitting around in the state of enlightenment, that he could easily go into it, but that he would come out of it for short periods to talk and to, I suppose, walk the stage or do other things. But is that incorrect, and is that in any way related to what you were saying earlier?
I think the problem word here is the word enlightenment. The Buddha was always enlightened.
Right.
It's not that he never lost his enlightenment.
Yes. Okay.
But he was not always absorbed in, let's say, samadhi.
That was there realizing the unconditional.
Oh, not always in that state of, yeah. Yeah, only occasionally, yeah. Yeah.
Is that something like what we're talking about here, that when he wasn't realizing the conditions, he would have been in the permanent state?
Yeah, if he's, say, giving a discourse or washing his face or going about any other activity, walking for then it's his states of consciousness would be indeterminate states of consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Mm. Yeah. I think the most common use throughout the sutras is in terms of the three asanas. And when the states of mind are said to be anasava, it's with reference to that. But in what sense the states of consciousness of an arhat would be said to be sasava? That's something that's still of a puzzle to me. I don't know whether we should try to do one more path factor, or is it too much? No, because all the principles are laid down. So, okay, let us try. Maybe in 10 minutes I could do it. Okay, this is now the second factor of the Noble Eightfold Path: right intention, samma sankappa. And I'm not going to give like sermons on them. I gave those on Saturdays. Okay, so here we come to, again, right view comes first. We'll find this with each of the other path factors. And how does right view come first? One understands wrong intention is wrong intention, and right intention is right intention. Just that ability to distinguish between the two types of intention, that is one aspect of right view. Okay, what is wrong intention? This is quite standard. The intention of sensual desire, the intention of ill will, the intention of cruelty or harming. That is wrong intention. Okay, now right intention. Right intention is twofold. Again, there is the right intention that is with the influxes, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisition. That's the mundane right intention. And then there is the right intention that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path. And what is the right intention that is connected with the influxes, partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisition? Now notice what happens here. The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, and the intention of non-cruelty or harmlessness. This is the right intention that is connected with the influxes and so on, ripening in the acquisition. Now I said, notice what happens here, because if we look at a sutta like Sutta number 141, exposition of the Four Noble Truths. We have an explanation. This is page 1100. We're starting at 1099 at the bottom. And what, friends, is the noble truth of the way leading to the cessation of suffering? It is just this noble eightfold path that is right view, right intention. Then jumping down 2 paragraphs, paragraph 25. And what, friends, is right intention? Intention of renunciation, intention of non-ill will, intention of non-cruelty. This is called right intention. That is the right intention of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. That's the classical definition. But now, in Sutta number 117, the same type of right intention has been relabeled as the right intention that is partaking of merit, ripening in the acquisition. It's no longer the right intention that is leading to the cessation of dukkha. And then what, bhikkhus, is right intention that is noble, taintless, supermundane, a factor of the path? Again, now we have here a shift away from what we might call the content of right intention to a definition of it purely as a psychological factor. And here this is done by collating a number of terms. This is true Abhidhamma style. A number of terms with that are roughly synonymous. The thinking, thought, intention, thinking, thought, intention, mental absorption, mental fixity, the directing of the mind, verbal formation. That's because in another sutta, vitakka, thought, has been explained to be a verbal formation, a factor responsible for speech. Even though when one is realizing the supermundane path, one is not breaking out into speech, but just the name carries through. What the text is doing is just bringing together as many terms as possible that occur in the text that are roughly synonymous. And so here we start with the term intention, sankappa, that is used interchangeably with another word, vitakka. And then from vitakka we come to takka. The thinking is takka, then thought is vitakka, then intention we come back to sankappa, mental absorption, mental fixity, because thought, vitakka, is considered to be the factor that fixes the mind on the object. When one is trying to concentrate, one uses thought to apply the mind to the object and keep the mind fixed on the object. Okay, and all of these are occurring in one whose mind is noble, whose mind is taintless, who possesses the noble path and is developing the noble path. This is right intention that is noble, and so on, a factor of the path. Then one makes an effort to abandon wrong intention and to enter upon right intention. This is one's right effort. Mindfully, one abandons wrong intention. Mindfully, one enters upon and abides in right intention. This is one's right mindfulness. Thus, these three states run and circle around right intention. That is right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. Okay, if there's any questions. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. The idea is that the person who has attained the supramundane path is said, I don't know if this really solves. It's just two ways of speaking. On the one hand, it's said to possess the path, in that this person, by becoming, even by reaching the path of stream entry, now possesses the path and can never lose the path. The path now becomes, you could say, a fixed part of that person's mental constitution. The person will always possess that path from one life to the next, even if the person has to go through 7 more lives till reaching final liberation. But the person is now endowed with the path. And then developing the path means that, normally it means that one is practicing the path, strengthening the path factors. But that expression comes to be used even in the Abhidhammic scheme with reference to that one mind moment. Somehow all of these factors in the path, that one mind moment, are being strengthened through that experience of realization or penetration of the ultimate truth of the Dhamma. But in the, what I would call the more ancient, more archaic scheme, what happens is that when the person makes the initial breakthrough, the person acquires the path, possesses the path, in that the person enters the path, becomes a stream enterer, descends upon the path to liberation. Then the person has to go on developing those path factors. As one goes on developing the path factors, then they get strengthened, and then one reaches the following stages of realization till one comes to the end of the path. Any more questions? It's a little technical, but I think it's a very interesting sutta. No more questions. Okay, if there's no questions, then we have to stop and share the merit. And thank you for coming despite all of the rain and slippery roads. Okay, we share the merit now with the Devas, Nagas, and all other beings. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanam. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanam. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha amhehi sampadang punya sampadang Sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavata cha ammehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe satanumodantu sabba sampati siddhya.